Just about ready to leave from the field that we are farming right down the road from where Sasha and I live. This is where we grow our garlic, where we've got potatoes. Now we've got all sorts of other crops like amaranth and winter squash. Our nursery is moving over here, as well as flowers. And in this video, I'm going to do a quick update on what the status is of the block here, roughly half acre or a little smaller, that we've been farming since 2020. And this space that we've started farming this year in potatoes, what that harvest is looking like, among many other things. So lots to pack in. I've only got a little bit of time while my phone has battery, so I'm going to get right to it. Hope you stick around. We'll start with the potatoes since that's what we're working on actively. And it seems like a good moment to look at this field. In some ways, it looks like nothing's happening, maybe just weediness. Just kind of disappointing because I've clocked so many hours hand weeding through the potato field to make sure that their needs are met. But we're starting the harvest and it's coming out beautifully. You can see this is the northernmost section here. This is the northeast, that's the northwest, and then one bed in. We did one over there. So we're about 1/6, 1/8 of the way done. Many hundreds of pounds have come out. And some things I wanted to highlight is we're trying to be really thorough and thoughtful about what happens next. Rather than saying, okay, potatoes are done, let's blast through here with the tractor, we'll pick up all the potatoes, we'll leave it till the spring and figure it out. We're saying let's hand harvest the potatoes really thoroughly, really thoughtfully. We've had some groups of volunteers coming through to help with that. Pull every last weed as we find them, lay them up in the walkways, and set the potato bed to cover crops that are meaningful for the fall. So in here, this remains to be thinned, but this is a really nice cultivar Japanese daikon that Sasha sowed. This bed is a little less strong, but that's the nature of the way these work. This is early wonder tall top beet. And the timing should be such that so long as we don't have a brutally early, snappingly cold fall and winter, if our first frost comes in mid to later October, these should be able to maturate. And so not only do we get a crop of really beautiful potatoes, but then also daikons and then also fewer weeds. We're also considering stones a harvest. And so what we've done is on the very boundary of this garden space, we've laid in a little furrow where the plow went through in the spring, we've laid a deep bed of hay and then have put stones on top as we find them. We throw them into milk crates, which are really sturdy, and then dump them here. As the rains come through, they're systematically washing them. And then as we need stones, we're planning on making a wood-fired dehydration building / maybe sauna. And so we're going to need thermal mass for that. We're going to need a way to store the heat from the stove. And these stones should be able to do beautiful work to that end. And so as we're digging potatoes, probably each bed is 2/3 potato, 1/3 rock. And so rather than considering them a nuisance, it's a yield. And while we're waiting for them to get washed by the rains, they have this beautiful windrow. And they're actually acting as a thermal battery. So in the fall, the energy of the sun can charge them and warm them and keep the daikons comfortable. Sure looks nice, and it's actually pretty thoughtful, one would hope. You can see the before and after. So here's a potato bed with the groups of volunteers that came through. The request was, hey, could you pull weeds as you find them? This is before the potatoes are harvested. So these potatoes have, these beds have died down enough that I'm actually a little hard pressed to find some legacy of vines, but they're in here. I think the folks that were helping to weed pulled the stalks of the potatoes as well, which can be a little tough, makes it harder to find them. Here you can see where they stopped. There's still some weeds in the bed and stalks. And so what we're going to do in these beds is wait until we're ready to start planting garlic. We're in early September. I'm going to guess by 2nd or 3rd week of September, we can begin planting garlic. And so long as they're not completely swamped with weeds, the potatoes can rest in these beds, and then we can do the last bit of weeding, the shaping, and move it directly into garlic. These two beds were dug out 100% of the harvest, and we didn't weigh it, but 2 cars left with pretty substantial loads of potatoes to be donated. So it worked. We had a nice big group. It was fun. Folks enjoyed. I'm going to share notes in the description for people that are within a reasonable driving distance of Ithaca, New York, and want to plug in. It's limited how many folks can come, but we'll try to navigate that. Look in the description for more details. But these were harvested, and then these beds were set to a mixture of fava. Some popped out of the soil from getting ready to germinate, so we're gonna put them back in, but there's lots of fava in here. The soil here does not seem to need a ton of nitrogen, but why not? It's a question whether or not fava will maturate, but maybe we'll get some early beans. There's also beets all throughout here, and then this bed is set to Piper's Sudan grass, as well as more radishes, I think, or beets. I'd have to look at the tag, but this only happened a few days ago. Just got a good wallop of rain, so they should be off and running very soon when the sun starts to hit that soil. You get the gist. So the rest of the potato patch here, as time allows, I've been taking this little scooter I bought from a friend, electric scooter, and zipping down here and hand weeding. I mean, literally hand, just pulling weeds. We wait till rains come so the soil is lubricated and soft, and then we look for and prioritize those weeds that are furthest along in seed formation, pull them, drop them in the walkway, reveal the stalks of the potatoes so that when we have the next round of work, it's easier to harvest and find them. It seems tedious, but it's going to transition this whole space into extremely well-developed permanent raised beds and walkways that act as perennial windrows of composting. So this entire walkway will just be completely filled with digesting organic matter directly next to the beds that can consume it and have a really functional feedback loop of nutrient flow within the space. I'll move to the other field next, but this is one more bed, or two beds here that we did the other day. This is with a hopeful, fingers crossed, fall green bean. This is a red tail bush bean that supposedly is a 50-day crop, so it's a question again, but it's a chance to inject nitrogen into the soil and perhaps get a fall green bean crop, which would be lovely to see if that's possible. More daikons, and then tons and tons of beets, all of them sub 60-day maturation time, with the fingers crossed that they should probably be able to come to fruition before it's too cold for them. If they don't, it's organic matter injection in the soil. That's okay, and if they do, then it's hundreds of pounds of more winter storage food for our needs and for donation, and a reason to keep tidying the beds, weeding the beds, while they wait for their ultimate next step, which is our garlic crop planted sometime this fall. So yeah, for year one in this field, with a pretty potent drought early in the season, with enough deposition of mulch, round bales of hay to the rescue always. We lean into them so hard. The potato field still should be able to yield a few thousand pounds of potatoes for donation and be transitioned into a permanent bed system that we're thrilled with. This space, which is a little bit more mature, has had 2 years of our permanent raised bed management, is really exploding, and it feels great to see what's happening here. This is a golden giant amaranth, playing up to their name fully. I'm a 6-foot tall person, and a lot of them are taller than me. They're about a week away from mature state. We're going to look back through the video last year where we talked about winnowing and cleaning amaranth seed and get a pin. That's soil, in case anybody's wondering. We're going to look back through at the video from last year and see what all the lovely notes that folks shared about winnowing and cleaning amaranth, because now we have, well, we'll just call it a fair bit to go through. And it's incredibly lovely how well they did. I thinned them by hand earlier. These were sown in June or first week of July, and all the weeds were pulled and laid right back down at their base for them to digest, and then thinned, although I think we could have thinned probably dramatically more, and it would have been great for their production. On the south side is Waltham butternut, playing the role, in this case it's like a two sisters. Instead of corn and squash, it's amaranth and squash. A good reminder that there are patterns that are not necessarily needing to be rigid as far as functionality. As far as tradition and culture and spirit, that is an entirely other question, but the structure of an upright, tall, hungry, light-loving element like corn or amaranth, and a low, sprawling, ground-covering, weed-suppressing vine layer like squash is a really functional combo, no matter who the ingredients. They've got a little ways to go, but it seems promising that we should be able to pull probably way more butternuts than I'm even seeing right now. We're gonna wait till they develop a little bit more skin tone, a little more warmth, and hopefully we don't have to wait for the rabbits to take interest, but it seems like each year that's the metric that gets checked as far as it's time to harvest, is when there's a tiny nibble in half of them. That hasn't happened yet, so we'll just let them keep on growing. The interior of this field is complex enough now, which seems like no matter how much we say out loud that it would be nice to make things simpler in our farming systems, we always trend towards more complexity and interrelationship. In the long run, it feels way better. Sometimes in the moment, I kind of scratch my head as to why we're making it so complex, but it's working really nicely here, especially without any irrigation. The bed you see here that looks like it has corn, this is Piper Sudan grass, which is just an Excelsior hot weather cover crop, incredible C4 pathway, really sun adoring plant. Basically, it's an annual. They melt into absolutely nothing with first frost and put on so much biomass. They can be cut frequently, so what we've been doing in some spots is cutting them and using them as mulch around some cabbages that are planted in here and to give a light release. But these were sown in the 3rd week of July, and we're in the beginning of September, so this is like a 35-day or a 40-day amount of growth with 0 irrigation, and they'll just keep cranking. Hopefully we can collect some seed. If we had thought it through more thoroughly, we would have done some sowing of sweet peas or a fall green bean crop throughout them to climb them. That's a missing element for sure, but I'm not complaining. They're doing beautiful work to follow the garlic and just inject massive amounts of organic matter and fracturing work with their root system into the soil. And we're watching the sun angle, and as it gets lower and lower, this cabbage block to the north of them will probably receive a very hard cut of Sudan to be used as a green manure around the cabbage and allow the fall sun to come in to help them maturate. It's just starting to get low enough now that this dynamic of tall grasses just to the south of them won't be as functional for the cabbage. Now that we've gotten rains and it's cooling, the cabbages need more and more solar energy to do their work, and we can release that along with nutrient deposition around them, so it'll be functional so long as we actually do the work. A couple different types of cover crops and follow crops for fall. This is red Russian kale, sown right after garlic. Kind of stuttered along for a bit, and now they're taking off. We need to do a first pass of thorough harvest. There's probably 20 or 30 pounds of good leaf for people and maybe 20 pounds of dinged up leaf. That would be great for the chickens. But a really functional, if not too aggressive, overstory for these little babini hickories. It's a nursery bed of trees in the middle. They're very slow to begin with anyway. They can grow through thick vegetation, so we'll just harvest the kale, the canopy, woodland canopy of kale from around the hickory and give them the release they need. And the kale will be gone next year and the hickory can take off. And here we've got chestnuts acting as an overstory to little beets. So this is where the garlic was, and we followed it up with a golden beet. Basically anywhere there was a gap in here, we tried to do that. We also transplanted butternuts to the north of the hazelnut row, and they're starting to take off. Really, the moment we got some strong rains, especially with this deep mulch system and the lack of soil disturbance, the rain soaked in, it penetrated down into the root zone, and pretty much every single plant being in this landscape in the last few days has started to explode with brand new growth. This is all within a few days. All it needed was that rain, and you know, we don't have irrigation out here. We have no intention of bringing irrigation, and we can just help the plants hold tight and wait through drought, and then pounce on the opportunity of vibrant growth when the rains come, and that's what we're trying to do, and the plants are too. There's so much more to talk about, but my batteries are starting to run low, so I need to wrap it up. But long story short, committing to deep hay in a landscape, especially beds here where it's too dry to seed, this has worked beautifully. We just keep repeating, adding the hay as weeds pop through. They're starting to wind down. This will be a 100% weed-free bed waiting for planting this fall. We'll probably do cuttings into here. You can see how well that worked last year. That was elderberry. These are 2-year-old elderberries. This is 1-year-old elderberry, and very, very functional system of creating beds through some turbulence, through some soil disturbance, and then stabilizing it into permanent raised beds as soon as is reasonable, and getting all bare soil covered with either vegetation or deposition in our case hay, because that's what we can find locally, reasonably priced, and it works. There are no gas-powered tools coming through here. There's no more soil disturbance or tillage. There is no irrigation. There is no plastic. In fact, for the last many sessions of working in here, the only tool has been a couple of hands pulling things, and then some shovels to dig and bring potatoes out. So these systems work. This is on land that we do not own. This entire system is by the grace of establishing relationships with neighbors. We only have a half acre where we are, and this is another acre of production that became possible by discussing and exploring with our neighbor and continuing to deepen and build that relationship. So this sort of situation could probably be possible for a lot of folks. So no money involved, just good neighborly relations like it used to be and like it can be again. Darren, you're a wonderful dude. Thanks for letting us be here. If you're watching this video, we'll have you over for dinner soon. For those of folks who want to help with harvest of potatoes, look in the description for more information. Let me know if you've got comments or questions, and we'll talk soon.